This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Launching its first manned spaceflight, embarking on lunar exploration, and developing the Beidou navigation system, China's space industry has witnessed rapid development in the past 5 years. What were the most noteworthy achievements for the country in 2016? In 2017, China plans to conduct some 30 space missions. The first cargo spacecraft, Tianzhou-1, will be launched, marking significant progress in constructing space stations. What will this mean for world space exploration? With preparations for Moon and Mars landings underway, challenges still remain for exploring other planets. What are the prospects of colonizing them for mankind? Expanding population, draining resources, and deteriorating environment. Science fiction imagines humans living on other planets. How far are we from that?
The possibility of exploring outer space has long held a fascination for many, making science fiction a hugely popular genre. And today, with advances in both space technology and the ability of computers to make movie fiction seem more real than ever, the realm of outer space continues to be a frontier for dreamers and for doers. Today, we look at the immense appeal of space exploration both in fiction and in practice, and consider how each can motivate the other. In the first half of the program, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by the creative producer of the Hollywood space adventure Passengers, Mr. Stephen Hamill. And in the second half, we'll be joined by a panel of experts from the space industry consisting of Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Cooperation and Mr. Xi Yansong, Director for International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration, and Nasser Mahmoud from Asia Pacific Space Corporation. That is our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Natalie Wong. Now let's start our dialogue with Mr. Stephen Hamill. Welcome to Dialogue, sir.
Thank you.
So you were involved in the writing of Passengers. So tell us a little bit about the story.
Well, the story of Passengers was created from an original idea, which is something very in keeping with the types of movies and the types of stories that I'm doing. It was written by a guy named John Spates, who at the time was completely unknown, and together we concocted this story and developed this screenplay over a period of a year. And it sort of went on to become one of the most loved scripts in Hollywood, and the result is the film that everyone's about to see.
The writer you mentioned, John, he was unknown before Passengers and other movies. You mentioned Doctor Strange.
Right.
And
yeah, Doctor Strange, The Mummy, Prometheus, and a few others. Yeah, he's an enormously talented guy, but at the time, rather unknown. And when I discovered his work, I really saw an original voice, and together we had a really potent collaboration, which was resulting screenplay. It's a science fiction story, but mostly it's a human story. I think the best science fiction are stories that take riveting emotional narratives, and you build a world around those narratives and those people, in this case, which is a science fiction one. The story takes place on a ship which is traveling 130 years from Earth to Homestead 2, carrying 5,000 sleeping passengers. And when they arrive, of course, everyone on Earth will have died, so they're sort of committing geographical suicide, but they're starting a new life. And this spaceship is not one of your conventional hollow, dark, empty ships. It's actually like a luxurious cruise ship. And so the entire story takes place on this. And I would say, in terms of overall what this story really is, what this film is, it's sort of Titanic in space. It really has all of those elements, very emotional, very intimate story, but huge scope, very exciting, enormous action sequences, and two of the greatest actors out there at the moment, Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt.
Yes, when we mention science fiction, the first impression that would come to all the moviegoers and viewers' mind would be magnificent visual effect. In this movie, you have that, and also you have a good story. When we consider visual effect, the computer-generated graphics, the CG technology, has made it possible for a sci-fi movie to make appeal to audience. But this movie, a lot of sets are actually built instead of computers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We hired the gentleman who did a movie called Inception, among other things. And he built these tremendous, beautiful sets. We shot the entire film in Atlanta on sound stages. And every day that I would walk in on set, I was always marveling at just the immensity of these things and the beauty of them. As a matter of fact, often I would leave lunch early and go and sit in the middle of the sets by myself before everyone came back, just because they were so beautiful. But yeah, the wonderful things about practical sets are they really allow the actors to have a physical connection with the environment, whereas with the green screen, of course, they're empty environments, and they have to pretend there's something there. So I think it really helped the performance aspect of the film, and in the end, computer-generated things are wonderful and are important, but I also think there's great beauty in constructing the real thing.
Another director who's a fan of actual set is Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
He actually built a lot of sets himself and,
Sure.
and designed some of the models himself. From a cost perspective, is it more cost efficient compared to computer generated?
It depends, In our case, I think it was the right choice, and I think the film shows that, and I think the quality of the film, of what you see, it represents this sort of piece of art almost that we're seeing. But it really allowed for a kind of warmth and a kind of soulfulness and a beauty to be able to be represented that sometimes you don't always get with a green screen effect.
But a lot of superhero movies are based on green screen. How do you compare these two?
Well, I mean, the superhero movies are different than my movie, but they're different, and they're both equally interesting. I know. Again, Passengers is set in this giant, massive environment, but is a very intimate story, a very enthralling story. Again, sort of a Titanic in space. So I think those comparisons are accurate when you think of the two films. And it was just appropriate that we build these sets the way we did.
Let's talk about another blockbuster here in China, The Great Wall, directed by Zhang Yimou, a very renowned movie director here in China. A lot of critics are saying that this movie is based on sets and computer-generated green screen effects rather than stories. But having said that, its box office performance is pretty good, 1.1 billion RMB here in China.
Yeah.
Have you seen this movie?
I haven't, no. I'd like to.
But how do you evaluate this story versus effect?
Well, hopefully effects are there to complement the narrative and complement the story and complement the character's personal journey. And they, in my opinion, should never take center stage. They should actually not even be something that we think about. It's just part of what we're watching. So in the best sense, great visual effects for me are that.
The producer of The Great Wall says this is the first co-production between China and the U.S. They describe it as the first real co-production between China and the U.S. What are the challenges facing this kind of production? Well,
I mean, a co-production is really sort of combining Chinese and American elements. And what you are trying to do is create a sort of organic shape, an organic narrative or story that results in something that we're not sort of asking ourselves, are we in China? Are we in America? What are we doing? It's just a wonderful story. But in doing that, the challenges are to create an organic element that sort of propels us and takes us into a world, I think, that plays to both an international and a domestic audience. I think it's that we're looking for that universal theme and a way in which we can represent that will play in both markets in China and the rest of the world. And it's a challenge, but I think it's something that needs to be approached at the end of the day through wonderful storytelling. More than effects, more than big sets. It really has to come down to something that's riveting, something that not only entertains us, but makes us dream, questions our philosophies, stirs our imaginations. And I think that's the beauty of any film. And that's something that I'm interested in pursuing, and I do pursue in all of my efforts.
Let's talk about the story of Passengers. 130 years of flying in that space, but something went wrong.
That's right.
For them, I'm not sure whether they knew that it was a one-way trip or.
No, it is a one-way trip. Yeah, and as I said, they're sort of committing geographical suicide because by the time they wake up, everyone on Earth that they've known would have died, but they have the opportunity of starting a new life. It's an idea of people wanting to have a fresh start, of rebuilding their lives, of taking a chance, and many things. But in the case of our two characters, each of them had a different reason for leaving Earth, and together they sort of combining their experiences of who they are and why they're on the ship in a way that's very explosive.
What kind of courage do you think that supports these human beings to embark on such a journey, a one-way trip to an unknown planet?
Yeah.
The reason why I asked this is because a company in the U.S. initiated a trip to Mars, a one-way trip to Mars. When it announced its plan, 200,000 people signed up for it.
Sure. I might be one of those people. I'm very interested in that kind of thing, and looking outside of Earth, for that matter, outside of ourselves. I mean, I think the whole idea of space exploration comes from our ability to dream and to wonder and to consider what's outside of our backyards. So I think it's a very positive expression. Obviously, if it's a one-way ticket, that's a different kind of problem. But all the same, I think that it's all very positive and can only promote something that I think can only be helpful to our existence.
We are seeing more and more sci-fi movies, both in the U.S. and here in China, from Gravity, Interstellar, Martian. Who would be more interested in sci-fi, Americans or Chinese?
I think that actually they're equally interested. What's interesting about the Chinese is that they don't really have science fiction in their DNA like the Americans do. And at the moment, actually, I'm producing and developing a number of science fiction local language Chinese films. And one of the things that is unique about that and what we have to pay attention to is exactly that Chinese people didn't grow up with sci-fi the way that a lot of North Americans did. And so in the way in which you deliver the story to them, the way in which it rolls out has to be very different. You can't simply say to someone in China, well, there's a robot over there in the corner and there's someone there. They'll say, what do you mean there's a robot in the corner? How did it get there? What's going on? Versus someone in America might say, okay, I get it, it's a robot, fine, what's the story? So I think you have to be much more thoughtful in the way that you present the story. But at the end of the day, the themes are the same, the story is the same. I think it's just the way in which the story is told.
Again, what fascinates me is that you discovered, John, the writer of Passengers, and many really significant and interesting stories, sci-fi stories. But here in China, there are tens of thousands of sci-fi writers on the internet and through the publishers.
Yeah.
But why didn't we develop a good writer and make it into a movie and put it on a big screen?
I think that those efforts are happening right now. I mean, whether it's the Three Body Problem series, which I think is a fabulous book,
yes,
or various things, or as you said, sort of internet writers as well. I think all of that is great fodder for potential stories. I also think original stories that come out of anybody are worthy of the challenge. But I think that why science fiction hasn't been made into local language films in China, I don't know, except that I think that there is a great desire for that and hunger for that. I think that over the years, Chinese audiences have loved American science fiction, but I think they're interested in seeing stories on their terms, from their perspective a little more. The truth of the matter is we all have the same information now with the internet. We all know the same things. The difference is in China, there's less access, I think, perhaps, to stuff that's in local language format, and that's something that I'm very interested in pursuing.
And also, let's talk about IPs. Here in the capital market, a lot of people are saying, let's discover some IPs. Let's invest in IPs.
Sure.
Like the War of Warcrafts, a lot of IPs are
right.
are discovered and make it into movies. But will that work? Or you really believe in discovering original stories?
Both work, yeah. I mean, I think it just depends. It also, an IP is only as good as how you adapt it, and so, finding the right people to take a really powerful, let's say, a very, compelling game and turn it into a movie, it's no easy task. A game is very different than a film. So it's really about the talent and the folks that you bring together to adapt that and the execution of how that's done. I think everything is possible with the right like-minded folks, with talented people, and especially with the sort of combining efforts between sort of Hollywood expertise and Chinese expertise, and both of our experiences and both of our ideas in creating real collaborations and active partnerships. And that's something that I'm very passionate about and very interested in, and I find an enormous amount of satisfaction in the process of doing that, because the Chinese filmmakers are brilliant and have so much to offer, and I think this kind of collaboration, which I'm working on with so many of them, has borne so many fruit that neither of us ever expected with our combined efforts. So, in the next couple of years, hopefully you'll be seeing some of these local language films that we're doing, a lot of science fiction, both in film and TV, and hopefully people will like it.
Looking forward to that. Great dialogue with you.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Stephen Hamill, the creative producer of the movie Passengers. Stay with us here on Dialogue. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Dialogue. China's space exploration has seen significant development in recent years, but there's still a long way to go for China to be a major space power. To discuss how that's beginning to happen, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Yang Yuguang from the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, Xian Song, Director for International Cooperation from China National Space Administration, and Nasir Mahmoud from Asia Pacific Space Cooperation Organization. Well, Professor Yang mentioned earlier, this is a big year, a peak year, a fruitful year for China. In 2016, we have a new launch vehicle, we have commercial applications of a smaller launch vehicle, the Kuaizhou. Give our global audience a context of what are the achievements in 2016?
Well, you know that 2016 we have so many launches which achieved 22 launches, which is similar like the United States. This year we will have more launches. This shows that the space activities of China is in a booming stage, and we have mastered many important key technologies. For instance, with the launch of Long March 5, we have mastered the medium and heavy launch vehicle technologies, which is a very good foundation for the future lunar sample return missions, and also for the launch of the future modules of our space station. And also with the construction of the Beidou or compass navigation satellite system, we can have more and more applications in the future. And concerning the commercial space flight, just 2 days before, our launch vehicle Kuaizhou has launched 3 satellites into space, and this is a purely commercial operation in commercial manners.
So looking ahead in the year 2017, what will be on board?
Well, we have a number of what we call a rainbow of activities. We have continuation of Long March 5 launches. There are 2 more launches. We have continuation of the Shenzhou 11 and Tiangong 2 program, which is going to be launching a cargo mission to our space lab in April. And we'll have more than about 30 launches in the coming year, which is unprecedented for a Chinese program. And the biggest one, I think the jewel of the crown would be the sample return mission of Chang'e 5, which is happening by end of this year. We'll be grabbing about 2 kilos of sample back to Earth.
But you said earlier, before we enter the studio, about how the lack of knowledge, outsiders living outside of China, the foreigners and the foreign press, have little information about what China has achieved so far. They don't even know that we have already sent our own lunar probe onto the moon. So outside of China, what are the general perception of Chinese space program?
Yeah, outside China, I think the perception is that China is comprehensively progressing towards mastering the all spheres of this space activity. For example, the normal space missions. In that, China has all communication satellites, the remote sensing satellites, and it is also the Chinese technology is quite trusted, and number of other nations are entering into bilateral cooperation with China for their satellites, and China is also doing good business in that.
A lot of scientific movies and science fiction novels have been talking about colonizing other planets. How far away is that dream or that ambition, if you would like to put it that way? Let me start with you.
Yes, as far as I know, the movies have been projecting it a lot. And you see, every scientific experiment starts with a fiction story. So that's the first stage.
A lot of countries are aiming at Mars, but here we're talking about mankind's colonization. So a great sense of cooperation will be necessary and needed. In this sense, how can countries bypass their sovereignty, their nationalism to cooperate together?
Well, I would say that distance is the biggest challenges to humanity to have interplanetary explorations. The need to drive this is the solution for international cooperation. We need to have not only just the engineering purpose, but also a scientific objective, or even a social goal to achieve. Let's say that we have overpopulated the Earth, and we need to go to another planet for colonization, or we can use our own existing technologies to change the global climate of a planet. For Mars, we can change the climate of Mars by bombarding the Mars using asteroid, and to generate carbon dioxide, and then use plantations and vegetation to change the climate, to generate oxygen and the ocean. But that's one thing that we can do in the future. But currently we are accumulating the technologies. We want to have first touchdown of human foot setting on the surface of Mars. Mars is the closest planet to Earth. We only take 11 months to go there. But some plants, we need to take years or hundreds of years to go there. So there are many ways that we can explore those planets. By some scientists say that we can send human DNA codes and your memories electronically to those planets, and then regenerate yourself, and then you're in a sense colonize one planet. But distance is always a challenge for humanity, even you're traveling at the speed of light.
I'm just curious, if someday mankind can colonize other planets, so what's this Earth role if we have already colonized another planet?
Well,
will these two planets coexist, or by then Earth will be a barren space?
Well, that's a very interesting question, but you must be aware that what the human being looks like is directly related to what the Earth looks like. So maybe in the first several hundred or even thousands of years, the two civilizations may have no quite different much differences. But with the year goes long and long, because the human being must adapt the local environment of Mars. For instance, the gravity of the Mars is much quite different from the Earth, and also the atmosphere. The human being cannot survive on the Mars surface without protection, and also the radiation on the Mars surface is very crucial for human being. So in the future, even if we can colonizing the Mars, there is because of the different environments, the human being will evolve in a very different way. So in the future, maybe the human being will not be the same in different planets. But on the other hand, at least in this century, I think it still needs a very long way to go. For instance, the most heavy object human beings have put on the Mars surface is the rover Curiosity, which is only 900 kilograms. How does a human being need to live on the Mars? How many resources do we need? So I think the most important thing for the human being is to reduce the cost of the space travel. So you see that for human Mars missions, everybody wants to go to the Mars, but it is quite difficult for the decision makers, for the politicians to make this choice, because this human Mars mission, as Mr. Xu Yansong have mentioned, even a step on the Mars need the money much greater than those invested on the International Space Station. So you can see how big this program will be. And I agree with Mr. Elon Musk that we should do efforts, but I don't agree with his solutions. You may heard that last year in Mexico, he raised his idea and also his consideration about colonizing the Mars. But obviously, he much underestimated the difficulty to go to Mars. We have so many breakthroughs to have, and also the most critical part is to reducing the cost.
If we asked a little children or someone 50 years ago to depict a picture of the technology or the world at now, they probably would say a lot of advancement has already happened. But if you look at that imagination, it's actually far advanced than what we are having right now, which means our technological advancement is much more slowly than we imagined before. Why is that?
Actually, it's not all that slow, because this space has provided us the platform and the technologies with the help of which the previous generation and this generation, they are two different generations, and there is a lot of advancement which has already gone in, and the space has provided us mesmerizing technologies. And it has, in a short span of 50 years, it has taken the ingress into every walk of our life, into every field of our life, and the space is directly impacting those fields. So I do not think that really the advancements are slower. I think from the time bracket perspective point of view, we have achieved a lot. The mankind has achieved a lot in this past 50 years, and the next 50 years are also likely to experience very breakthrough technologies, like quantum technologies, like the impact of those new researches and the researches which are being carried out in the microgravity environment, because in that environment the new materials are likely to be introduced, which are going to have revolution here in the earth.
Well, we hope we can speed up this whole advancement process. Thank you very much. That was Mr. Nazir Mahmoud, Mr. Xu Yansong, and Mr. Yang Yuguang here in the studio. That is all for today's dialogue. I'm Natalie Wang in Beijing. Goodbye.